All right. Can you hear me okay? Does this work? Fantastic. Let's go right into it. First of all, I'd like to thank the Crowdown, or not the Crowdown, the Crow Supply for putting on Teardown, which I'm glad they accepted my talk, and I'm glad to be here for you. My name is Craig Topham. I'm the Copyright and Licensing Associate for the Free Software Foundation, and I started becoming a free software activist in about 2006. And then shortly after became an associate member of the Free Software Foundation. And then I began volunteering, and then like 3 or 4 years later after volunteering, a position opened up and I got the job. So here I am. I care very deeply about free software and freedom in general, and hopefully going to share some of that with you today. And I'm also honored to be called the world's #1 bicyclist. What? What's bicycling? It's this. So basically, when I ride my bicycle, I pick up garbage with a grabber stick. There's a cigarette butt. Pretty much I've been doing it about 11 years. I'm trying to make it a thing amongst commuters. And so, yeah, there you go. You get the idea. There's another cigarette butt and then a face mask there. So that's kind of what I do. Question? The Unger Nifty Nabber. They're $20, lifetime warranty, and you're available in most hardware stores. Yes. Oops, don't need to do that. Wait a minute. All right, so starting off, a disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer. No, this is legal advice, and if I misspeak, I'll be corrected somewhere along the line in the future. The objectives today is we'll talk about why free software is important to software freedom, or why freedom is important to software freedom. And you may be asking, what's free software doing at a hardware hacker conference? You got hardware, something's running on that hardware, it should be free software. Then we're going to introduce various concepts of free software licensing, and then get into the GNU General Public License specifically, kind of the one-on-one of it all. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what the Licensing and Compliance Lab does for software freedom. And then by the end of this, I'm going to shamelessly plead that you all become associate members and help us do our work. Basically, the membership dues is what helps us keep our light on, so we'll come back to that. Really quick history of what we are. So in the mid-'80s, the GNU project was started in order to create a fully free operating system at the time. This gentleman named Richard Stallman saw the issue with proprietary software and being how it controls users, and he said that can't have that, so we have to have our own free operating system. A few years later, the Free Software Foundation was founded to basically support the GNU project. It's kind of like the business side, and they're the technical side. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. And then in 1989, the GNU General Public License version 2 was released, and there was some before that, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, but that was the first real big step for software freedom. And then in 1992, the kernel Linux was released under the GPL v2, and the kernel Linux in combination with GNU made GNU Linux the world's first free operating system. That's why you often hear the name GNU Linux, but most people just say Linux these days. So real quick, what is free software? I'm going to read this verbatim because this is what's on the website. Software is said to be free when the user has the freedom to run, copy, distribute, study, change, and improve the software. And that is distilled down into the 4 freedoms, which are to be able to run, study, which means you have access to the source code, be able to copy it, just verbatim copies, and then be able to share your modifications, which we'll talk a little bit about how that works. And those are defined in the free software definition as published by GNU and the FSF. And these freedoms are given to users through the licenses under which it's being distributed. But the big question is, why? That's the biggest I can make it. I think it would start getting off the screen there. Is why do we have free software, and why do we have free software licensing? And I really think it's important, and I feel we should be swelling with gratitude that we have time and opportunity to ponder this question, because way too many people, their world looks like this. It's not great out there for a lot of folks. It's really ugly. And I don't mean to bum everybody out. And I also don't need to make light with my graphics about our predicament. But nobody needs to see a collage of nightmares to make my point. I read this bumper sticker a long time ago, and it says, if you're not outraged, you're not paying attention. And that still is applicable. In the center of the graphic there, there was a mushroom cloud, and I wanted to block that out because it didn't seem appropriate given the recent turn of events. But yeah, things are in trouble. So we need solutions. And actually, one of the things I found interesting about bicycling is that when somebody sees me doing it and they understand what I'm doing, their inner light shines a little brighter. And I really feel that that's what the world, no, I know that's what the world needs right now to make it a better place. But we also need free software, which is a little more involved. So I wish there was I'm still searching for a better way to say this because I'm a pacifist, but we are locked in combat for free software. The proprietary software developers of the world, they in this context, they would do away with free software if they could, but they can't. Otherwise, they would have done it already. But this doesn't mean they've stopped trying. And so there's a bigger picture here I'd hope everyone would like to take under consideration, is because there's more than free software which is at stake. So like our battlefront is free software freedom, but the war, again, pacifist, the war is multifaceted. Yeah, for our future. I mean, there's a lot going on. Because there are people out there fighting. I mean, they're out there fighting for clean water, food, shelter, like basic things, but also freedom from oppression, freedom of speech, privacy. You know, they're out there doing this. And those things are increasingly difficult to protect. But people are out there. They're out in the streets, some of them giving their lives. Like, it's not great. But, and if any of those battles fail, our future would look very, very bleak. And I believe that control over one's computing is a human right. And if the free software movement fails, you can say goodbye to privacy and freedom of speech, amongst others, I'm sure. So here's the deal. We want freedom, they want to take it away, and our best defense that has protected free software and allowed it to flourish over the last 40 years is in large part to the GNU General Public License. Now, the GPL wasn't the first free software license, but it was the first free software license that ensured freedom then, now, and into the future. So this is why we have free software, is to spread and promote software freedom. And we actually need the community to kind of do their part to keep it strong, because anything that weakens our cause reduces our chances of victory. And so when somebody says open source instead of talking about freedom, it weakens the cause. When somebody uses a permissive license instead of a copyleft license, it weakens the cause. If somebody uses a DCO versus a maybe more substantial agreement for their contributions to a project, it weakens the cause. And if, heaven forbid, somebody uses a non-attribution permissive license for their contributions, because it weakens the cause. And I don't think we can afford to weaken our position in our fight for free software and a free society. And everything I just said, those aren't made up words. We're going to talk about them in detail, so hopefully, retroactively, that screed will make sense. And so, yeah, this is why I say free software, because very early on, I decided I want to talk about freedom, and so you have to put that message first, even if it requires a little more explanation, because I think what I find amusing is one of the excuses that was given as to why they had to come up with the term open source is because it was too confusing. The English language, the word free in the English language is too obscure, the business won't understand. But it's like, I can say I live in a free society and nobody goes, what do you mean free? What, nobody works and the government just pays for everything? No, nobody does that. It's like free society. Oh, a society where everybody lives in freedom. But you say free software and people are like, what? You know, free isn't freedom. No, free isn't freedom. Free, no, but not as free as in free beer. And it's like, no, did you say free beer? Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. That was it. And so now we can get into all this business. So we got to go through the glossary. There's some terms that everyone needs to be familiar with. Copyright, again, I'm just going to read the definition. It's original works fixed in a tangible medium, granting the creator exclusive rights. According to the U.S. Copyright Office, computer code is treated as literary work. They probably could have done a little more because it's not quite like a book. So, yeah, hopefully folks know what that is. The license is a legal agreement that grants the user's rights. And so quick show of hands, how many people at least once in their life have scrolled through a giant wall of text to get to the I accept button? There's no liars among us, okay. So what you're agreeing to is the license, basically it's the end user license agreement mostly, but it's telling you what you can't do with the software. And so with the free software license, it's telling you what you can do with the software, and that is to exercise the 4 freedoms. And yeah, so that's kind of it. So the next one is what's called copyleft, and it's basically a playful hack on copyright, where copyright restricts what people can do, where copyleft passes the freedom. And so basically what happens is the license has to stay the same. So if you receive, like let's say a GPL, which is a strong copyleft license, if you modify it and pass it on, your contributions also have to be GPL. That's just kind of how it works, and that's how it flourishes. So there's copyleft where that's a requirement, and then there's a strong copyleft, which is, it's the same thing, but a strong copyleft, whatever it's combined with, has to be under that license. And that's what the GPL is considered, a strong copyleft license. Yeah, and then there's also trademarks and patents. As you can see, I didn't care whether it bled over my graphics because I'm not going to be able to focus on these today. These are more of the licensing 102 class. But patents in particular are going to come up a couple of times. Particularly software patents. So there's a website we have called endsoftwarepatents.org. It's run by a volunteer lawyer that lives in Greece, and it's a really good resource. Software patents are insidious, and they haven't quite been stamped out. Trademarks, I would only bring those up only because they can be used to kind of curb some freedoms. Again, I think I'm saving that for the 102 class. So now we're going to get into the meat of it, or the tofu of it, for my vegan friends out there. Yeah, so I'm just going to go down this list and talk about each one of these things. The graphic that you see there is on GNU.org, and it basically shows kind of how the different licenses overlap and relate to each other. So the first one is the public domain. Now, there probably isn't any software in the public domain because in the United States it's the life of the author plus 70 years. So we got to wait. And so if somebody wants to put something into the public domain, they have to dedicate it. And there's licenses that do this, or there's just like, I dedicate this to the public domain. I'm, again, not a lawyer, but that is one way people go about doing this. And then the problem with the public domain is if you come across software and it doesn't have a license and it doesn't have an author, you can't use it. You have no right to use it. Almost said machine learning there, but I didn't want to go there. But for the most part, yeah, if it doesn't have a license, you don't know who authored it, a company definitely wouldn't use it, and you probably shouldn't either. The next one on the list is a lax permissive license. Folks know this as like the MIT license. We like to say expat, because this MIT, this Michigan Institute of Technology, you may have heard of it. It's kind of it's like a little community college, not internationally recognized or anything, but they have dozens and dozens of patents available to them. And not patents, sorry, they have dozens of licenses. And so yeah, so permissive licenses are basically, you can kind of do whatever you want as long as you keep intact the attribution and the license with the code that's written. One of the issues is it doesn't require giving the source. So something that can happen is people can take the software and not give back to the community. A really good example of this is Apple with FreeBSD. I'm understanding that the underpinnings of their current modern operating system has free software in it, but because it's permissive, they're not required to pass on the same freedoms that they received. They received them, and then they're not giving back, which is not cool. And so we really want to encourage like stronger licenses. So, but if you absolutely must use a permissive license, we recommend the Apache 2.0. And the reason why that is because it has a patent grant, and a patent license grant, and what that means is that if I give you software, and I know there's a patent in it, you have the license to use that patent. Again, I think I'm saving that for the 102 class. So the next one is the copyleft licenses. Of course, this is the GPL. There are a few others out there, like the Mozilla Public License version 2. But the Mozilla is not a strong copyleft. It's just a copyleft, so you just have to, whatever your changes and stuff have to be the same license. Other ones out there that aren't necessarily related to free software, the Creative Commons. Most people know about this by now, but they came along, I think it's been like 20 plus years, and made, one of their more famous ones, that the Creative Commons attribution share alike. So you can take it, as long as when you pass it on, you've got to use the same license. It's copyleft. And then there's a little section in here for the non-free open source software. And so real quick, so the GNU project was started in the mid-'80s, and that's when free software started. And it wasn't until 1998 when a lot of the free software people got together and started saying, it's harder to sell to corporations, and that's when they came up with open source. And with that, they founded the open source initiative. And so there's two major authorities. There's the FSF and there's the OSI that decide what is free or not free. And if you look at those two lists, they're identical. Outside of a couple, there's one or two that aren't, they think is free and we don't. And so I believe that's what that section is for. But that is also true. You can, you can compare the two and you can see for yourself. The next one up is the freeware and shareware. These are things, typically they come in binary form only. You're able to run them, possibly with restrictions, but you're definitely not going to have access to the source code or any permission to modify it or reverse engineer it. And you might have to run it with limited permissions. And then, of course, there's proprietary software, gross, unsubscribe. I think you're all familiar with that. And then the last thing that's in this screen diagram that you can't see, it's about release software and private software. The release, I think, is what's actually happening in public, but in private, with free software, you could do whatever you want. There's no restrictions. It's just when you go to distribute the software that there's obligations to share the source code. All right, so here's the, see, I said 101. It looks like a lot. Just focus on the pretty colors. So this is the GNU General Public License, and I'm going to talk about that. So before the version 2 came out, there were some, I didn't want to say attempts, but there was certainly, there was attempts. There was a license for Emacs, GNU Emacs. It might have been before GNU, but Emacs had its own kind of free software license. There's one called Bison. It's a Bison, I think it's a free software license. It's used by a game called NetHack, and if you don't know what that game is, you should just go find it. It's really something and fun to play. And there was a GPL v1, but it didn't take long for v2 to come out. And so that was 89, and there was some updates in 91. And one of the concepts that came with it is the only or later option with GPL, because the people that were working on the GPL v2 knew that there might be other versions coming after it, so let's give people the choice. Because once it's distributed and it's out in the world, they might not be able to upgrade the license. And so if it says or later, if it's like GPL v2 or later, you can put it under the GPL v3 or 4, 5, or whatever. Who knows what the future may hold. The next on the list is the GNU Library General Public License, which eventually became to be called the Lesser General Public License. And what that is more or less a compromise. So the software itself is copyleft, but whatever it's combined with doesn't have that strong copyleft requirement to make the whole thing under the GPL. And the rationale is there's people out there that have libraries, and those libraries might as well be free. Because if they can't use them because they can't combine it with their work, they're just going to make their own or whatever. So it's a compromise to just make that available for folks. And so the next one is, of course, the v3. It was published in 2007. And a year before that, there was a huge public engagement where they got feedback from people. They had workshops, and there's an archive of it all online, and it's really helpful if you want to study this stuff, because you can see what the rationales were for people deciding to have this in the license or not this in the license. Yeah, there's a trove of information in there between just regular public people, lawyers, people in the free software community, all participating in that. And so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the differences between GPL v2 and GPL v3, because I find those interesting. The first one is the patent license grant. And as I mentioned before, it gives the recipient permission if there happens to be a patent in there. If I happen to be the patent holder and it's in there, you have permission to use it. But that doesn't prevent somebody coming from the side with their patent. As I mentioned before, I'm sure you've all heard the term patent troll, where they just buy up copyrights and patents, and well, they're patent trolls. They buy up patents, and they don't produce anything. They just use that to squeeze money out of people that are using their patents. The next one is TiVoization. That term is going to be dated eventually, but there was a product called a TiVo, and what they did is they took the GPL v2 software and kind of locked it into the device where you couldn't get to it or replace it or modify it or anything like that. And it's all centered around, there's some language about the installation scripts and the means to install the software once you've compiled it onto the device. And the GPL v2 does cover this a little bit, but the idea is it's been expanded a little bit in GPL v3 just to make it a little stronger. But I wouldn't say a contentious thing, but people have very strong opinions about that particular thing. The next one is they added to the GPL v3 is to deal with anti-circumvention. So the World Intellectual Property Organization is an international treaty, and all the countries sign on to it. And in America, we follow that treaty by the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And what that says is it says you can't bypass I can't remember what it's called. I should have had that on my paper. It's basically a technological measure that's protecting something on the device. And if you tinker with it, if you mess with it, you're going to break the law. And so digital law, well, that's the popular one is like DRM, they say digital rights management, but we say digital restrictions management. But it's the same kind of thing. So if it's a GPL software and it happens to kind of function as a technical, I should have memorized that. If the GPL software is functioning as an anti-circumvention thing, you can tinker with it and not break the law. The license basically gives you permission to bypass it or tinker with it. That's just that. The next one is kind of a big one. So with the GPL v2, if you violate the license, you're done. Your rights are canceled immediately unless you get permission from the copyright holder. You're donezo. And so, but with the v3, there's a 30-day grace period. So if somebody identifies a violator, if they are able to fix their problem within 30 days, they get their rights restored automatically without having to get permission from the copyright holder. The next one is GPL v3 has a section 7. This is definitely a 102 area, but it's more for compatibility with other licenses. Yeah, it's a rabbit hole. I don't know if I can go down that, but yeah, the version 2 doesn't have this, and this was more just to compatibility with other licenses. But it also has, like, for example, there's a thing in there where you can allow people to use your trademark. I'm going to reserve that for 02. And then, so another one was basically the GPL v2 was written kind of in American language, and they wanted to internationalize it more, so there's just different legal words that are more internationally recognized and just kind of modernize the text in general. And I think those are the most of them. If there's one I missed, then let me know. And of course, the last thing I wanted to point out is the GPL v2 and GPL v3 are incompatible, because they're both copyleft, and so if two licenses are telling you the thing has to be under its license, you can see where that might conflict. Also, when the GPL v3 came out, right behind it was the Affero General Public License. And what that does, it adds one section to the license, section 13, that basically says if you interact with a program over the network that you're entitled to the source code. It doesn't modify what distributing means, but it says if you're using the thing over a network that you are also entitled to the source code. And then lastly, I just put the LGPL down there as well. It got updated to the latest version. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be a lot of talk about the LGPL. So that's that. All right, so next slide is about how to choose a license for your work. Just use the GPL, easy. Next slide. Area to explore. No, I'm just kidding. So yeah, there are some compromises around this. I can't officially recommend not permissive licenses that aren't the GPL, but like for example, it depends on what project you're trying to contribute to. So if you got this project, it's all Apache, and you go, I want to contribute, here's my GPL, they're going to go, nah man, I can't, not going to work. So that's something to keep in mind, and it helps to kind of look at the community and see what they're doing. A really good example of this is JavaScript and like Node.js. Like, I've never seen a non-permissive license in there. Like, that's what they are. And so if you wanted to contribute to that, you're probably going to have to kind of go with the flow, I guess. We do have some recommendations on how to choose a license on our website. So that URL's there, and then we also how to, if you want to choose the GPL, we have suggestions, recommendations. Because it can't be legal advice, so they're very soft words I'm trying to use. Yeah, recommendations on how to apply the GPL to your project. Okay, so here are some kind of areas to explore. This is kind of I'm probably going to expand on these if I do it a 102 talk. The first one is confusing licenses, and we're seeing this quite a bit with the GPL, and we're taking action against it. So when somebody will take like the GPL and put on an additional restriction that conflicts with what the GPL says, and that's okay in of itself because the GPL says that you can remove those restrictions if you find them attached to the thing. But what a lot of people don't realize that folks can do that. And so we remind them that, that's cool. You can put this, you can't use this for commercial purposes, but the recipient can take that restriction and take it off. That's what the license allows you to do. And so, yeah, a part of that is like free washing, like why people do this. Obviously, the GPL and GNU are kind of widely known, and people recognize what that means. If you see GNU and GPL on a source code, you're going to go, oh, I know what that does. I get my 4 freedoms with that. And if you open it up and there's additional restrictions, and it's like they want to say that they love free software, but then they're actually not really liking free software. And yeah, watch out for licenses with use restrictions. That's a big one. Commercial, something like no military, that kind of stuff, which is good, but it's just the license isn't where you engage in that kind of activism. Another one is dual licensing. So if I have a project, I can release it under the GPL, V2 or V3 or whatever I'd like. But I can also release it under a proprietary license. If I wanted to let some other company use it, that's fine. The FSF's official stance is as long as the 2 versions are the same, that's cool. But what a lot of people do is they'll have like a community version, and then they'll have like an enterprise version, which has more features and more stuff. And that's like, nice try, But it's like we're glad that they're releasing some of it as free software, but it's just kind of, goes back to that whole free washing where they're trying to say, hey, we love free software, but we kind of don't. The next one is the developer certificate of origin. I mentioned that's the DCO that I mentioned earlier. Essentially, this is something put forward by the Linux Foundation. And all it is it's kind of a sign-off. It makes it a lot easier for people to contribute, which I understand the need for that. But it kind of, I don't know. I think it could be problematic in the future. And I also, so the Linux Foundation, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but if you look at their membership list, it's IBM, Oracle, Microsoft. It's the who's who of people that have historically been trying to destroy free software, and now, all of a sudden, they think it's great. The next one is the license proliferation, and this is a big one. I'm going to get down on my knees for this. Please stop making new free software licenses. Please. Now, if you have a license that actually addresses something that's not currently existing, that's okay. Yeah, let's talk about it. But 99% of the time, they just like to do their own thing, and it's like there's like over 100. Our license list has like over 100 licenses on it, and we just don't need another one. Because yeah, it doesn't hurt anything, but it doesn't help. It doesn't help. And I'll be writing an article about this in the next couple months. The last one is exceptions or additional permissions to the GNU General Public License. Yeah, that's definitely a 102 thing. But yeah, there's certain things like, for example, with GCC has an exception because if you compile with GCC, little specks of GCC are going to be in your binary, and there's an exception that says, yeah, that's okay. Hopefully I got that right, but it's something along those lines. And there are a few of that. There's the Java class path exception. I'm not a big fan of Java, so I don't spend a lot of time like keeping up on that, but it does exist. It allows people to exercise their freedoms, but also there are additional permissions. So that's it's not taking anything away. It's just giving more than what comes out of the box with the GPL. Additional resources to help you on your journey. We have, so of course, the FSF has our license list on gnu.org/licenses/license list. And that's where you can see all the licenses that we reviewed, and they're categorized as whether it's free or not, whether it's compatible with the GPL or not, and then if it's non-free. And so, yeah, people send us requests all the time. That's why the license proliferation thing is, because it's more work for me. No, I didn't say that. But yeah, that's something to check out. And then also there's the GNU GPL FAQ, which has like over 170 questions and answers that are available for people. One of the things we do, which I'm going to talk about in a second, and I'll skip over it when I get to it, the licensing teams answers licensing questions from the public. If you're developing free software, we will help you for free. It's at licensing@fsf.org, kind of easy to remember. And myself and my team, my manager, and a couple of very talented volunteers basically answer licensing questions from the public. And if you're a proprietary developer, we will answer your questions, but for a nice, sizable consultation fee. And again, we don't give out legal advice. It's basically we're giving a description of the intent of the license. So we just don't give legal advice. Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what the Licensing and Compliance Lab does now to promote and protect free software. Of course, the big one is the GPL violations enforcement. And this is also, so this is one of the reasons why we use copyright assignment. So if you want to contribute to a GNU package, let's say GNU Emacs, we ask that you assign copyright for just the contributions that you're giving us, nothing more. And you're actually as a grant back, so whatever you wrote, you can do whatever you want with. You could even make it under a proprietary license. That's what a grant back allows you to do. But because we are the sole copyright holders of GNU, if somebody is distributing GNU software without providing the source code or an offer for source code, we can tell them to stop. And so once we contact them, that's the 30-day clock starts ticking. Maybe a couple of emails, 2, 3. The 4th and 5th email might come from a lawyer. And that's normally when we get people's attention, and they tend to get a little more friendly, cooperative. A lot of the times, like most of the time, it's just oversight. They don't realize what their obligations were or what they, maybe had done wrong. There are people that do try to get away with stuff. Places in other country are a little more difficult to engage legally. But that's something that we do we take reports and we try to follow through and do what we can. The next one is something new, is that we're enforcing our trademark and copyright of the license itself. So I talked earlier about people modifying it or adding additional restrictions. We see that and we ask them to stop. Like, here's a really good example. Somebody took the GPL and just stuck an extra section in there, just right in the middle. And right at the top of the license, it says you can free to distribute this as much as you want, but changing it is not allowed because it's a copywritten protected thing. And and then also the trademark comes into play because when people, the GNU and GPL are recognized, and so I'm still working on a better way to say this, but basically they're hurting our brand by putting in their own stuff or doing different things with it that change the license. And so if you go to the GPL FAQ, we actually do have ways that people can use the text of license of the GPL. That's a really common thing that people share their different languages in their license, but it involves removing GNU entirely from GNU can't be in there anywhere, and then there's the preamble, and at the bottom of the license is how to apply. And so if people take those off, it's fine. A good example of that is I can't remember what it's called, the SSPL. They basically, I don't want to get too far into it, but yeah, they're not disrupting our copyright or trademark. They've complied with what we like, but their license is, whether it's free or not, it hasn't been settled, I guess. I would say it's non-free. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it basically says that if you, it takes the Affero license and just expands it to anything in your stack. Like if you have a backup program that backs up your server, you need to provide the source for that. It's almost to a point where it's like unrealistic that anybody could comply with it, but you could comply with it. But anyway, I don't want to get too far into that. The next thing we do is we evaluate licenses. So we have, not licenses, devices. We have a program called Respect Your Freedom. What we do is if a vendor is selling a product that has free software, we can examine it to make sure, one, that the packaging doesn't promote non-free, like you don't open it up and it says install Windows 11 on it, things like that. And also that I'm able to have the source code, I can compile it, flash it onto the device, and we give it like a little certification mark, like the same way you see like organic food has like organic certification on it. Of course, there's the answering the licensing questions. We also maintain our licensing materials. That's the FAQ, that's the how to apply, the license list. There's quite a bit that we have out there that might be useful to folks. The next one's the free software directory. So if you're interested in any of this, every Friday from noon to 3 Eastern Daylight Time, we host a free software directory meeting on IRC. So if you use LiberaChat and get on IRC that way, and go to, it's just FSF, pound FSF. I basically show people how to take some source code and review its license. We have there's a program called Scan Code Toolkit that scans it. There's others out there, but that's kind of the one we're using right now. And to find proprietary code files in there and things like that. And then looking at the code itself and making sure the license is there, making sure it's, there's no additional restrictions. And I think over the last year I've trained like 3 or 4 people on how to do it. It's just kind of a nice skill to have, and it's fun. And we also have the endorsed distros, where we look at a software distribution and make sure it's fully free. Again, they don't promote non-free stuff. And right now there's only 7 of them, and we're hoping to expand that. But yeah, it's really tough. Like for example, like Debian may have heard of it. We don't consider them a fully free distro because you can use Debian with only free software, but they don't. It's not by default, and you have to go a couple extra steps, and because of that, they're listed as a common distro. I don't decide. I sort of decide, but not really. But yeah, that's the thing. And then finally is the copyright assignment, and that's kind of one of my jobs. I just take it. It's a clerical work, just processing it. And like I said before, the reason why we do that is to do the GPL enforcement. And look at that, questions. I can take a couple. Where are we at? Thank you. Oh, 41, nice. Yes.
So I wanted to ask everything about respect. Oh, thank you, awesome. I wanted to ask about respect your freedom, since I don't know much about it, but it sounds, to what level does that deal with hardware? Is that at all, or is that only when you receive a product? Does that focus only on the software side of that product, the freedoms related to just software?
You mean like if the hardware is free itself?
Yeah,
like,
does it touch on hardware at all, or is it only focused on software? Like, yeah, so then, well, okay, so you get a product, there's the open hardware, right?
Right.
And is this only focused on the software when you interact with that product, basically, and doesn't really touch on hardware, or that's my question?
Yeah, I don't know if the hardware, we look too far into it, as long as it runs on free software. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of the more focus of it. Yeah, I'd like to explore that a little bit.
That's good. Yeah, okay. That's all I was wondering.
It's more of the software.
Cool.
And then behind you there.
You mentioned sort of certifying devices, giving them a sticker, basically. Is there a fee for that?
No. So what we ask for is a sample of the device, which can be problematic if you, like we have the Talos 2. That's an expensive motherboard, but they were able to supply one with us so we can do our certification. But yeah, there's no fee. But it's not just the software, it's about presentation. So the vendor, if you go to that product's website, it can't be promoting non-free software. And yeah, and like when I get the packaging and I open it up, the manual can't say, like I said, download Windows or whatever. So yeah, it's slightly, there's a little more demand on top of it. Yeah. Oh, what's that? Oh, yeah.
So I'm just curious about how many respect your freedoms have been granted.
I think they're up in like the 40s. It's been kind of a lull lately. I've been by myself for like 2 years. It was just me, but now I have a coworker. So things kind of slowed in a lot of our program areas, but things are turning around.
I don't know if this is a contentious issue or right to ask here, but so GPL, say I have a tool, and I'm thinking about releasing it GPL, so okay. Free as in freedom, but I still want I want people to use it, but I want, if corporations are going to use it and ask for help, I'm sort of charging them. That's not GPL, but how can you is that what happens? Like, release things GPL, and that always remains free. They can do what they want, but if somebody wants help, you're charging a consulting fee. Like, are there projects that are still making money, still under GPL, but doing something like that?
Yeah, it sounds like you're describing RHEL.
I'm not a I'm like a total software noob, so I have no idea.
Okay.
I just don't want companies to. I basically, if somebody's gonna, it doesn't even have to be a company, but if someone's gonna kind of waste my time, and I'm providing something else, that I'm not violating GPL by charging them a fee to help them use it, for example.
No, yeah, you're welcome to do that, yeah, for sure. I thought you were talking about the Red Hat situation, and what they have done is they have Red Hat, which is GPL, but they have a service agreement that says if you exercise your rights under the GPL, we're going to cancel your agreement with Red Hat. I'm really summarizing it, but what that basically, so, and they'll say you can only install this on 10 computers, which is not what the GPL lets you do that, but if you installed on more than 10, they just cancel theirs. You can do it, but they're going to cancel your contract with them. It's one of those things where it respects the GPL, but it doesn't respect the spirit of the GPL, as that's the phrase I keep hearing. So I thought that's what you were saying, but yeah, any kind of side work or contract work, yeah. That's,
GPL, that license isn't amended in some way.
right, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry.
If you sell GPL v3 software, you only have to provide the source code if someone bought the software.
It's all about distribution. So if you had the software and you gave it to somebody else, that act is what triggers the requirement for source. So, but if I give you like a disc and I say, hey, it's $100 for this disc, I take the money. You can have the disc, even though, you can go download it somewhere. You can definitely. Right. So right. It's so if you go all the way back to when it first started, like the internet wasn't as robust and everybody had access to it. And so that's how stuff was distributed by mail, and they would provide the source with it. I believe if you looked at the language, it says something along the lines of in the same manner that you receive the binaries. So if you downloaded it from a website, there should be a link somewhere saying here's the source on the website. And then there's also the offer for source, which you don't necessarily have to provide it right away, but you could say if you want it, just ask us for it and we'll give it to you. So yeah, way in the background. Not way in the back, but half in the back.
Hey, sorry if I missed it, and maybe you touched on it, but I don't remember hearing you discuss the viral nature that people talk about with the GPL3.
A little bit.
So the issue that people often come back to is the requirement that if you incorporate GPL software into your software product or into your product, you are then also obligated to release your source code. Which is also like why the Java class path exception exists.
Right.
Or people have leveraged that exception.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that viral nature and
Sure.
other licenses that might not have that same requirement?
Sure. So that I mentioned earlier, that's what's described as strong copyleft. So regular copyleft means the license has to say the same. The strong copyleft is the part where if it's combined with something and makes a single work, that work needs to be under the GPL. But what was the question? Sorry. I can't hear, sorry.
Are there similar licenses that would give the copyright holders that same protection without forcing that strong copyleft?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know the Mozilla Public License version 2 is a copyleft license. It's not a strong copyleft license. I don't think there's a lot of them. So, yeah, that is kind of the viral nature of it. And in my opinion, what it's spreading is freedom. So let freedom be a virus. I let everybody get it, not one person excluded. So, did that answer your question? Sorry. Okay.
Am I correct in thinking that these licenses only apply to the source and not distribution of binaries? Or is there restrictions that happen with the binaries?
It applies to the binary. So if I distribute the binary, there either needs to be the source available in the same manner you got that binary or an offer for source.
Okay, I feel like there's a lot of projects where you can download the source freely, but you either have to jump through some hoops or pay to get the binaries. Is that like against the spirit of...
Oh, pay to get the binaries?
Yeah,
like they've pre-compiled it for you?
Right, bad for end users, or end users basically have to buy it and developers can compile it.
If the binary is for sale and you buy the binary, that's fine, but as long as they provide the source code as well.
So I'm talking about the other way around. So the source is free, easy to download,
Yes.
but then you have to buy the binary. Is that a separate?
Or you can compile it yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. You can sell the
Okay.
binaries. Yeah, that's as long as the source is available. And is there somebody coming in after me? Because I will be at the free software table. which I expect each and every one of you to show up and become a member. But yes, go ahead.
So, with the whole legal system, there is a degree of whoever has the most money is going to have the most success. Like, if you just are able to pile as much money into the trial as you want. So, like, how powerful are these? Are we really able to protect them to the degree that we need to whenever there can be a lot of money that might assail us?
You have like an example, or
Not at all. This is just a general idea, kind of thinking about like some of the monopoly stuff that happened in the past decades of like, they just, kept it in courts as long as possible.
Oh, I see what you're saying. That's certainly a possibility. The well-funded lawyer legal team can do wonders. Yeah. Cool. All right. Again, I'll be at the table if you have any follow-up questions or want to yell at me because I got something wrong. So let me know. Oh, yeah. Real quick. Thank you. That logo there is so this is the 40th anniversary of the Free Software Foundation, and there's all kinds of events. So if you go to fsf.org and look around, there you'll see stuff going on. It might be in your area. It's all over the world that they're hosting little get-togethers and stuff. So